So, long ago in the distant year of 2017, a Disney Channel series called Milo Murphy's Law was airing its final batch of Season 1 episodes as part of a week-long special event.
5 disastrous days in a row.
I'm freaking out.
And concluding that event was the debut of the season finale episode, Fungus Among Us. Now, this was one of the few times that Milo Murphy's Law vaguely entered the public eye during its run, as Disney was quite excited to promote the fact that fan-favorite character from Phineas and Ferb, Dr. Doofenshmirtz, would be appearing on the show as part of the finale. Or was that excitement when the crossover actually came out, huh, Disney? Anyways, while the hype surrounding this episode is what drew me into eventually watching the show, so in a sense it kinda worked, it actually spoiled one of the best reveals in the entire series, that it was in the same universe as Phineas and Ferb. But there was more to the twist than just that, and the scene that builds to the reveal is perfection. So I just mentioned that the hype building to this episode was largely in part due to Disney's promotion of the Doofenshmirtz cameo, but what about the show itself? Was everything building up to this episode, or should I say this scene? This reveal? Well, let me back up. The scene we're talking about today is the reveal that Dr. Doofenshmirtz is a part of the world of Milo Murphy's Law. It goes something like this. After a realization that there is no way to go back in time to stop a pistachio takeover of the human race, Milo Murphy, time travelers Cavendish and Dakota, and the creator of the Dr. Zone show, Orton Malson, are forced to reconsider their options. With no other time machines in the era, they have to think creatively about what to do if they're going to save the world. Cavendish realizes that the legendary inventor of time travel, known only as the mysterious Professor Time, was in fact alive at the same time as Milo and his friends, or around 2017 in the show's canon, which is where they're all stuck.
Yeah, but we gotta think.
What we need is a working time vehicle. If we can go back in time, we can stop this before it ever started.
Yeah, before it started.
We can save all of them.
Yeah, we can save all of them. But where are we going to get another time vehicle?
Milo suggests that perhaps they can get this Professor Time to invent time travel sooner, and in doing so have a new way to go back and fix the past. Now, up to this point, the show has mentioned Professor Time only once, in the mid-season finale Missing Milo, when Milo asked how time travel worked, which was an excellent bit of foreshadowing for this moment.
Some guy named Professor Time invented it years ago. Or like for you, years from now, I guess.
Wait, the guy who invented time travel was named Professor Time?
Yeah, so? Oh, hey, that's a coincidence.
But back to the main story. After discussing where they can find Professor Time, the gang has to fight off one last pistachion monster in an incredible action scene that creatively takes advantage of the location in the sewers, the presence of an airboat, and many other aspects of the environment, as well as being really funny and well animated, and I really need to stop talking about it before I just make the video about that scene instead.
Now what are you gonna do?
But after escaping all of that and getting back on course, the scene begins. Cavendish realizes his navigation GPS is broken, so they can't make it to Professor Time's place. Then, Dakota remembers it being said earlier, but can only remember something about Cracker Road. Orton notes that he actually wrote down the address of Professor Time as stated earlier, 9297 Poly Parkway, and Milo realizes that he knows where that is, and he can guide them through the sewers to get there, which is followed by a callback to the first episode, as Milo lets them know about the raccoon in the sewer. This is brilliant because in this short 30-second exchange, each character contributes to the conversation in a way that expresses an aspect of their personality. Cavendish immediately suggesting the standard way to do something, Dakota not remembering specifics, Orton being the note taker, and Milo being familiar with the sewers. These are all expressions of the characters that truly make you feel the bond this group has in this situation. And they're a group of characters that doesn't exist in any other episode of Milo Murphy's Law in the same way. Oh, and DLG had his big moment earlier, so for now I'm leaving him out.
It's a sad dog's life.
Everyone exits the sewer, and they're all led to a strange parking garage under the building. Okay, so that's interesting. DOG and Milo sniff out the situation to make sure the area is safe before the rest of the group follows suit. As they get in the elevator to go up to Professor Time's apartment, Cavendish pushes the top button. He remarks about how Professor Time is a legendary inventor and brilliant innovator. Combined with Dakota's remarks from earlier about how Professor Time experienced years of constant setbacks, there is plenty of information to piece together Professor Time's identity beforehand. As the elevator reaches the top floor, they enter the apartment as the shades of purple are eerily familiar for those who have seen Phineas and Ferb. Then, all of a sudden, the gang sets off a net trap, and at this point, all the pieces should have clicked into place. The Professor Time that we're about to meet, stepping out of the shadows, is Dr. Doofenshmirtz.
Wait, you're not the pizza delivery guy. This is my pizza delivery guy trap.
This scene is absolute perfection for a number of reasons. First and foremost, as I said before, this reveal is built up incredibly well by the rest of the season. From teasing that the show is set in the same world, to name-dropping Professor Time, all the pieces are there for you to put together this reveal on your own. The second is that this scene works in contrast to the rest of the season as far as tone and pacing. Quiet moments in Milo Murphy's Law are rare, as there almost always has to be either a song, a joke, a visual gag, or something happening at every moment in order to fit the show's comedic tone. But here, we're simply watching the gang try to sneak into Professor Time's apartment, trying to keep away from danger, desperately hoping he hasn't been replaced by a pistachion, and also quite excited to meet the person who Cavendish and Dakota know to be a legend. Tensions are high, as the fate of the world and the characters we love is at stake. We also hear a reprise of the music designated as Professor Time's theme in the build-up to meeting him, setting the mysterious and ominous tone.
How about time travel? How's that work?
No idea. We literally just push a button. Some guy named Professor Time invented it years ago. Or like for you, years from now, I guess.
The final reason is that this scene is animated incredibly well. The lighting and shading of everything contributes perfectly to the darker tone of the scene and episode, and small animation details such as the elevator light as it begins to go up, or the moving shading as Doof walks into the scene don't go unnoticed. Of course, I will bring up the two animation errors that should have definitely been caught. This misplaced in-between as the gang turns around to face Doof, and Doof's missing coat bottom. But neither of these take away from the gravitas of the scene. The boarding that builds the mystery of the reveal, or the generally intense feeling that the show will never be the same again. Especially when you compare this scene to the same setting as animated in the Phineas and Ferb effect, where the story picks right back up. I mean, just look at the background difference. But yeah, the animation and boarding for this scene is stellar. I love this scene a lot, and I think it works incredibly well as a cliffhanger to leave the season on, as well as just a statement for the show will never be the same from this point on. So what lessons can we take away from this? One is to know the tone of whatever project you're working on. Choosing to subvert it creates a unique feeling for the audience and helps prepare them for a twist, shift in plot, or even just a strange comedic beat. Another lesson is to properly set up your reveals beforehand, both in the season and in the episode. This scene wouldn't work nearly as well if you weren't immediately able to connect the dots about everything said about Professor Time throughout the episode that also applies to Dr. Doofenshmirtz, or if Professor Time wasn't established as a character at a completely different time in the show. Yet another lesson is simpler. Tie musical themes to your characters. Okay, well, that's not a lesson for writers, but reprising the musical theme from the previous time Professor Time was mentioned helps build the suspense immensely. And finally, and this is true of any project, make sure you understand your audience. This scene plays on the audience's expectations for the show and plot, and it leads into a plot-driven crossover with Phineas and Ferb, something almost unheard of in the world of animation, where crossovers usually exist as standalone stories. This all brings me to my final point about the episode, though. It was promoted using the fact that Dr. Doofenshmirtz was in the episode, but since he only has the one line, they redubbed it and lip-synced it for the trailer.
Wait, the dog's name is Diogi? What's that all about?
So if you watched this episode in the middle of the Milo Murphy's Law hype, you knew this was the only place for the show to go as you neared the end of the episode. And perhaps his single-line cameo was something you found disappointing after all of Disney's hype. I mean, this ad described it as the Phineas and Ferb crossover begins.
The Milo Murphy's Law Phineas and Ferb crossover begins.
When in fact the follow-up to this episode, the Phineas and Ferb effect, didn't air until almost a year and a half later, on January 5th, 2019. But despite the fact that the scene is incredibly disappointing if you watch the promotion expecting a full Phineas and Ferb crossover, in the context of the show itself, it is genius and absolute perfection. Japan's airing handled it even better, showing a preview of the full crossover episode once the credits rolled. But nonetheless, all of that is in the past. I just felt the need to address it since it's what a lot of people remember about this scene specifically. I also think there's an interesting conversation to have around the fact that this reveal only works if you view Milo Murphy's Law as a sequel show to Phineas and Ferb, which it isn't directly promoted as. Phineas and Ferb was a worldwide phenomenon, and this show assumes you have some familiarity with it in order for this scene to have meaning. In isolation, watching Milo Murphy's Law and getting to this scene would end up having the effect of, oh, it's just some random guy. So the cultural context required for this to work could easily be part of a larger conversation. But nonetheless, Dan and Swampy have said that this was their plan from the beginning of Season 1, and you can absolutely see all the planning that went into making this episode, and more so the scene itself, work perfectly as the cliffhanger to end the first season on. The ad was right in a way. Everything did build to this one moment, this entire season, and perhaps the most meaningful of all. Instead of ending the scene with the end ? Like so many other episodes of the show, this is the first episode where we get a definitive to be continued. Let me know what you think of this scene in the comments below, Dimension Hoppers. Did you get this reveal spoiled for you, or were you able to experience it the way it was meant to by watching it on Disney+? I'm curious to hear what you have to say. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you back in Dimension 1. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed the very first episode of One Perfect Animated Scene. Now this is a series that I hope to grow and expand, and I actually have 3 more episodes planned about 3 different shows for each week in July. So hopefully I'll be able to get those out, and then if the series ends up doing well, I'll be able to continue that as a regular staple on the channel. So let me know what you thought of the first episode in the comments below, if there's anything you think I should change or do differently when talking about other shows. And of course, Owl House Season 2 is still airing, and that's amazing, and I'll probably want to talk about that at some point too. So let me know what you want to hear about. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end, and if you're here, you might as well subscribe and give this video a like. Thank you so much, and have a great day.